Here we have a wonderful display of, I think they're bulbous buttercups. A glorious yellow. There's a great mass of them here. Yeah, wonderful. Without doubt, the crowning glory of this patch of waste ground is this big display of comfrey. It's covered in bees. The flowers vary from a sort of purple to a pink, and sometimes you get some which are almost white. And these which are blue, I need to put them in the shadow, otherwise the sun just bleaches them on the disc. Like all bees, they collect both nectar and pollen. There's many uses. It's used for green fertilizer. Grow it's very quick growing, and you can rot it down and put it on the land, or just put it on the land and dig it in. It's also very useful in herbal medicine, if you're into herbal medicine. It seems to cure just about everything you can think of. I'm not sure how true that is. If you look on the bee's back legs, you can see that it has pollen on it, a little lump of pollen. When it collects pollen on its body, on the hairs, it gathers it up, rubs its back legs together, and it stores it on a little series of spiky hairs on its back legs. If you're expert enough, you can tell which flowers they've been visiting by the pollen they've been collecting. And you can there are books where you look at the pollen down the microscope and you can see which flowers the bees have been visiting, because each pollen is different, very different. And growing down by the riverbank is ground elder, masses of the stuff. The scourge of gardeners. It's it's very difficult. It's like creeping thistle. It spreads with underground stems, which are very hard to get rid of. You only have to leave one little bit in the ground, and it sprouts and produces a new patch of the stuff. It's very smooth, the plant. The whole plant is very smooth. And there you can see the typical ground elder leaf, which you see in your garden's a nightmare. But of course today, with weed killers containing glycophosphate, its days are numbered. It can be got rid of in that way. And there's a lovely display of forget-me-nots. A nice cornflower blue with that yellow eye in the centre. And just a beautiful flower. There are several forget-me-nots. I confess that I can't identify them individually. But this one is much bigger than the one I videoed earlier. Nevertheless, it's growing right by the river, so it's maybe something to do with the fact that there's more water here, because it's incredibly dry everywhere else. And waiting to make their appearance are the Himalayan balsam, an introduced species which is spreading along river banks and grows to 6-8 feet tall in places. It does have a Very spectacular flower. There's these very pale green stems which you can see there. In the winter time it dies back to ground level, so it produces all this very, very rapidly. The bees absolutely love it, bees and wasps. It has white pollen, so in the late evenings when the flowers are out, wasps are smothered in the stuff like little white ghosts whizzing about. And of course it produces masses of nectar, which if you're a beekeeper is what you want. And the nectar, the honey, is quite runny and very tasty and clear. It's very, very nice, but you don't often see it for sale. I think they must keep it for themselves. Again, growing on the trampled area, we've got this little plant here, a pineapple plant. Just pinch a bit and between your fingers. It has a quite a distinctive smell. The flower is a very, very simple, seemingly insignificant thing, but the foliage is quite nice. A bit like chamomile, which they used to use for lawns before the days of lawn mowers. And we also have an example of meadow cranesbill, and that lovely blue flower, and the black anthers in the middle. Unusual. This flower is very common on riverbanks. I suspect it's a garden escape. It has 4 petals, belongs to the crucifer family, and it varies from almost white. This almost purple colour. It has a wonderful scent, but it only produces it in the evenings, and where there are lots of it, it's almost overpowering. It's a bit like the garden flower, I think we're called night-scented stocks. But it's very common on Yorkshire riverbanks. And even now, if I smell it, it's a beautiful smell, absolutely beautiful, but very subdued compared with what you get in the evenings. This little plant, I think, is Viver's bugloss. It's very similar, it belongs to the borage family, very hairy. It has these lovely blue flowers like borage, which if you're rich enough or attend such things, you drop them in flowers into pims on summer evenings just to add a little bit of colour to them, to the drink. Again, a lovely blue, but you can see the very hairy foliage there. I have poppies here ready to appear, all drooping before they straighten up and open up. And there's one there just about finished. And here is that weed dreaded by horse owners, ragwort, very poisonous to horses. It produces a tall yellow flower, like a yellow daisy flower, and of course should be pulled up, spreads everywhere on waste ground. In fact, I think there's a law saying that if it's growing on your land you should get rid of it, but whenever I'm driving round I see it on central reservations everywhere, or council owned land, I suppose, where it seems to flourish. You also get it in horse pastures where there's been lots and lots of horses and very little grass. Ragwort seems to grow very well, of course, because horses will only eat it as a last resort. So if you have horses on good pasture, then they tend not to be poisoned by this. But if your horses are overcrowded on small pastures with very little grass, then they will eat this as a last resort and it will kill them. And this is one of several docks. It's called a broad-leaved dock, reasons which are obvious. The leaf is very broad. Unfortunately, snails like it, and slugs, so the lower leaves tend to have been eaten into a net by slugs. And of course this is the leaf which, if you're stung by nettles, you rub the sting with. It's supposed to take the pain away. I can't say that I've ever found it terribly effective. And of course it had other uses when you were young lads out and caught short. And this is cow parsley, another umbellifer. Sort of the carrot family. And you can see it there. Slightly hairy stems, but smooth. Much smaller than hogweed, a much bigger plant. And non-poisonous, and it festoons roadsides in May. It's just coming to the end of its season now. This is another very delicate umbellifer. I don't know what it is. You can see a hoverfly or wasp. Very nice little flowers like lace. And here we have a solitary example of white dead nettle. Again a labiate, it's square stem, and these typical labiate flowers. One of the horsetails. There are many of them. They're very, very primitive plants. They were around before flowering plants ever appeared. There are many of them, but I'm not sure which one this is. It produces these little galls on the leaf. shining away in the sunshine. Well, I don't doubt on June the 16th we'll all come piling down this little path here, past this wonderful display of buttercups, the big burdock, that glorious display of comfrey. We won't even notice it as we rush to the river to get our fishing fix, having been away for 3 months.